And we're live. Hey, Mohan, thank you for joining the AI Champs today. Uh, the first question I want to ask you, and I ask this all of my guests, do you remember your emotions when you first tried ChatGPT?
Oh, yes. Thanks, Tony, for having me. Um, I wasn't, I didn't jump on the GPT bandwagon that quickly. I wish I had on some level, but initially to me it was something interesting. It wasn't massively, revolutionary at the start, and I think a part of the reason was because I wasn't entirely using the prompts correctly, right? But it's after when I took a small course on prompt engineering, and when I started to develop the right tools and the right mental framework to use ChatGPT properly, that's when I really got a lot more mind blown, right? I built training plans. I've done trip planning. I've even done historical movies research when I was trying to remember scenarios from movies I watched when I was younger, all through ChatGPT, right? So to me, like, yeah, with every tool, right, making sure you use it correctly in the best possible way is always quite empowering. And it in fact reminded me of the time when I very first used Google, and this was way back, if I remember correctly, somewhere around the year 2001, 2001, 2002, around, I think 2002, yeah. That was another mind-blowing experience.
Hmm. It's interesting because many people who ask this question, they compare that to Google or to search engine. For
Yeah.
me, I didn't really. I've been in the internet for yeah, also since actually I think before 2000. Yeah, and I don't remember such um, emotions about like Google for some reason. Though
Mm,
maybe I was too young at the time, so
yeah.
maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you raise an interesting point. So I also hear a lot from people that, oh, like ChatGPT is like just a hype. But you actually mentioned very interesting thing about like prompt engineering. So yeah, I agree with you completely that a lot of people they get discouraged from using ChatGPT because they try something. They are not very good communicators probably,
Mm,
and they cannot communicate what they want from
yeah.
ChatGPT and they don't get good results and then they say, oh, it's like not an interesting thing.
Yeah. No, I think with every tool, right, and every lifestyle change, you have to give some time, right, and some effort to trying things out. It's like going for a run and then checking out your body to see whether you've lost weight or you've gotten into shape, right? It doesn't work that way, right? You have to give some level of dedication. You have to give some level of effort to learning this new paradigm or framework or model, and then you have to go through the process with a certain amount of childhood, curiosity, and also naivety, right, with respect to discovering this whole new experience. And it always helps to be around a community of people that have a similar passion. So I remember, um, I was in Phuket for a bachelor party with a bunch of friends, and in the pool, I mean, we're all startup founders, right? You bunch of startup founders in the pool or a bachelor party, and the one thing you talk about, you end up always talking about is tech. And at that point in time, all of us were talking about ChatGPT, and one guy was talking about how he was using it to improve processes in the company. Another guy was using it to potentially develop the next product. So having a community of people that have that similar passion and childlike curiosity for trying out new tech also really helps to push you to adopting a new technologies, right? And because I'm a lot older than I was when Web 2.0 first came out, I'm always mindful that if I don't force myself or continue to refresh myself, it's quite easy to get left behind, right? And I don't think that's good, as a whole, right? For me personally and also professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the thing that I am not tired to repeat is that I strongly believe that prompt engineering is now the literally the only skill everyone, like everyone who is in the knowledge business, in the IT business, should
Mm.
learn, not to be left behind and not to feel like, uh, as for example, now you would not be able to to use a mobile phone, like in a year or two, not having basics, basic prompt engineering skills will be the same.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And I'm pretty sure some of the forward-thinking schools are already introducing that to their curriculum, right? I mean, when I was 8 years old, we were already learning, how to use Microsoft back then, MS DOS, and simple Windows tools, right, to operate the computer. So I would think the same thing is happening for 7 8 year old children. Figuring out how to use AI tools, prompt engineering tools, and various Gen AI tools to help them with schoolwork and those kind of things.
Yeah, and it's interesting that in this particular technological change, it's really, you don't have to learn something like, especially consider about the prompt engineering, you don't have to learn something like completely new. It's just efficient communication, how you communicate your ideas, your tasks, same way you do to other people. The thing is, other people are more kind of, they may ask you some follow-up questions, and basically through some inefficiency you can get the results.
Yeah, I think with every technological paradigm era, right, the big hurdle to cross is always the user experience hurdle and the input mechanism hurdle. So if you think about it, right, when the transition from desktop to mobile, the challenge for maybe the older segment was that the desktop had a larger interface. You could use the keyboard, the mouse, so there was a lot more flexibility in the use case. Whereas mobile was a much smaller interface, and depending on which era of mobile you use, it's either small buttons or touch, right? And I think I remember, right, the challenge for that was everything was done on a more compact, much more faster, quicker pace. And then of course apps came in and disrupted all of that. So the big leap was I would say a user experience one, and one that required a different input output mechanism, right? And here's the thing, right? Now the leap from mobile to, if we look at AI, right, there seems to be a complete again shift in the user experience, right? On one level, the way information is retrieved is prompt based. Thinking through what makes a good prompt, figuring out the different personas and patterns across the prompts is one part of the challenge, right? And then the second part of the challenge, of course, is the audio, with audio, right? So on some level, some folks that are a bit more advanced are using audio as a form of a input mechanism. And I remember significantly increase once this bandwidth issue of input output mechanism gets fixed. And of course, he was referring to typing or using your phone, but AI and ChatGPT completely changes that once you use voice. Because you can communicate in way more depth. You can give faster and description and complexity, right? So I think for people to cross that barrier, it's a function of them just understanding the new user experience paradigm and getting used to that shift in user experience. And once they're able to do that and they're able to embrace it, then their experience with the new tech will take off very fast. But they have to want to invest that time and effort to do that in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with this shift, it's even more about like the mental uh, kind of mental habit, because again, we are all used to the chats and audio messages, but we're not used that we can control or retrieve information from a machine like this. So for many people, it's actually a mental shift that they need to, uh, like the mental chasm, I would say, they need to overcome to actually understand. Yeah, now we are communicating with machines not through uh, pressing the buttons, but through actually communicating what we want in a natural language.
Yeah, yeah. There's also a certain amount of comfort, right, around AI that people need to be okay with, right? Because you and I could enter the same prompt and the result could be completely to not completely, but it could be different,
Hmm.
right? And I think people are also um, I think that a deeper sense of critical thinking is also needed when using AI tools, which is again something that the human race, has had a problem with in the last 10 years with fake news and all that kind of stuff. So it forces people to have to think more and be a lot more critical. So that also becomes another barrier or challenge to overcome, right? Um, but then again, right, on the flip side, um, the with the way AI is done and the generative concept of it, for those that have realized the power that has the power at their fingertips, right, when they're able to really harness the use case of it, it has created an entirely new following for the work that they do. So a friend of mine, his name is Carlos Bannon. He's architect and a professor by training, and he started using AI tools to do generative AI for the architectural space. And his Instagram, I'll mention it at some point. But his Instagram is full of phenomenal Carlos Bannon, CarlosBannon, right? So if you
You
follow
can
his
send it here in the chat, and I'll
okay,
just
let me
pin it to
yeah
our stream.
yeah let me do that. And he's developed a phenomenal following around AI, generative AI for architectural space, which has become a phenomenal new paradigm for him to use, right? So I think this is the massive opportunity that people are slowly starting to realize, right? That by putting in the time, energy, and effort to adopt AI tools, you could 10x, 50x the potential output, right? From a professional standpoint.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it's a very good way to learn with the community. So you're actually running one of the biggest IT and startup communities in Asia. So why don't you tell a few words about E27?
Yeah, sure. So the company I run, E27, it's a um, it's a tech ecosystem platform, right, based out of Singapore, and we focus on the Southeast Asia tech ecosystem. So we create thought leadership content. We create events. We just finished a big one in June, in May, sorry, called the Echelon Conference. And then we do a lot of innovation programs, connecting the different stakeholders from investors, startups, and corporates, right? And AI has become a very big part of a lot of these activities. We're in the midst of announcing partnerships and collaborations with large corporates that are very active in the AI space over the next couple of weeks. A large part of the content and companies that were showcasing at Echelon a month ago were AI companies, right? And a lot of these AI companies, interestingly, right, have a global starting point. So it's fairly common for Southeast Asia companies to be focused on the Southeast Asian market or maybe their own home market like Indonesia or Vietnam. But AI companies are unique in the sense that they have a global footprint and focus from day one. And I think this is starting to be a big game changer, right, for companies in markets like Malaysia, Philippines, where typically they might have been overlooked for larger opportunities like Indonesia. But now, because of their cost arbitrage opportunities and the fact they are working with global companies, they've suddenly become very attractive investment opportunities for VCs.
Hmm. Interesting. So you mentioned that you basically connect the startups with investors. Could you maybe dive a bit into this so that the startups that are listening to us know like what they can do on the platform, how they can benefit from it, and same for the investors?
Yeah. So startups that register on the platform, we put most of our services for free. We open up opportunities for them to connect with corporates. So we work with many corporates around the region, from Prudence Foundation, Clevertap, Brace, Meta, all these different corporates, right? A lot of which are in AI. It opens up opportunities for collaboration with a lot of these corporates, but the startups can also raise capital through getting access to our investor database, where there are close to 1,000 investors now on the platform. So a lot of this can be done online with our business matching tools, but we also do events in certain markets. So we did the Echelon event in Singapore. We're doing an Echelon Philippines event later this year in September. So depending on where you are and what is your interest, you could use the online matchmaking tools, or you could participate in some of our offline events to raise capital. And we work with everyone from angel investors to VCs to CVCs to government linked funds, all across the region, that are looking to invest in early stage in tech, across all sorts of verticals, right? Not just AI. But if you ask me, right, I mean, every vertical is going to be AI powered, right, at some point.
For
Today
sure.
you have AI powered marketplace, AI powered healthcare platform. At some point, no one's going to even mention AI, right? Everything will be AI powered at the back.
Yeah. So it's interesting that y- you probably have some very not only bird's eye view of the Asian startup market, but a pretty granular as well. So I wonder, did you do any comparison between, like, say, start AI startups in Asia and AI startups, say, in the US? Is there kind of any difference in any features like
Yeah.
teams, topics they're into?
So the typical big difference between the companies based here and the companies based in the US is the amount of capital they raise. AI companies in the US typically will raise 20, 30 million fairly early on. A lot of them are in either trying to build LLMs, or they're trying to basically do core tech related work. Whereas in Southeast Asia, a lot of the AI companies are solving for very specific problems
Mhm.
that work very well with AI, right? I'll give you an example, right? There's a company called let me type it out here in the chat.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a company called DCube. Make sure I put it here. Yeah. So DCube is doing a data trust. They're solving for data trust related problems in AI, right? It's a fairly niche issue, but a really painful problem for companies that are building. They're collecting large amounts of data for use in whether it's private or public LLMs, right? So Southeast Asia, at least, right, has got different companies like that are building for very specific use cases that have global market opportunities. And of course, they do have comparables in the US and all, and those comparables have raised a lot of money compared to the ones over here. But that's one of the big differences. Another company that I can talk about is Staple.io. Again, let
Mm.
me paste the URL right over here. And Staple is actually looking at interesting use case that is still very prevalent in this part of the world, which is to convert documents into structured data. So they work with different organizations like telcos. They work with delivery companies, because a lot of these companies still deal quite heavily in paper based data, and not just in one language, but in multiple languages. Right? So there will always be comparables globally, but in these cases, a lot of these companies are revenue generating from day one. They don't raise a significant amount of capital, so it makes them very capital efficient companies that would ideally down the road become good M&A targets.
Mhm. And so, do you have any insight into what the investors from Asia are looking in AI startups? So, for example, uh, we've all seen over the last 2 years, like every OpenAI update or every new base model being released, killing like hundreds, if not thousands, small startups that are
Yeah.
basically just wrappers around these base models. So, are investors still looking into the apps using these models, or are they looking at more infrastructure solutions like you mentioned, like Dcube? I mean, Staple is more app, but Dcube is like more infrastructure. So, what investors are looking at?
So I'll tell you, right, I think investors are looking at every possible part of the AI space, right? I think just in if I recall correctly, right, just in February alone, right, there was like a significant 70 over percent increase year on year in AI investment. I think from Feb this year compared to the same period last year, right? So I think in the region, at least for Southeast Asia, you have investors that are looking at infrastructure type investments. You are investors that are looking at traditional AI disrupting existing sectors, and then you have investors that are looking at AI tools that can become the tools and shovels for other AI companies or AI centric companies, right? So I don't think there's one specific use case that Southeast Asia investors are looking at. Now, a lot of this is also driven by um, chipset and semiconductor related investments. So the biggest gamut of investments are definitely going to large semiconductor infrastructure type place. And again, Malaysia, Singapore, markets like that are getting the lion's share of the attention, right? So you have Microsoft, AWS, a lot of these companies having multiple like announcements over the past few months. Everything from infrastructure centric investments to even investments around helping companies utilize their service for AI centric applications, right? So it's a whole spectrum now. Over time, I think as the market cools a bit, there will be some level of, I think, relooking, right, as to which sectors would make the most sense. I would still think the infrastructure would be the big one in this part of the world, especially in things like data centers, chip manufacturing, foundry related areas. And then the other area would definitely be in terms of the tooling, like the tools and shovels for the AI space overall, right? The
Mhm.
LLM type cases are going to be, dominated by your large companies for sure, right? But Southeast Asia is the opportunity to provide good AI tooling and infrastructure type software for all the larger AI companies in the world.
Mhm. So, from what you said, I hear that it doesn't really make much sense for startups that are creating specifically apps on top of the base models that are, say, streamlining some processes or stuff like that, but they don't really develop any technology. They use the existing technologies, they kind of join them together in an app. And you didn't mention this use case, so does it really mean that investors in Asia don't really look at these types of startups?
Well, the rapper models will definitely get some funding now, right? Since everyone is excited about the space. So I would assume that in the short term, wrapper-based startups will be able to get some level of funding, but for them to get post-seed type funding will require a deeper level of technology, at least, right? I think investors will build a bit more scrutiny over time. I mean, now you just put AI powered X, right? And I think most investors will at least take a meeting or will want to talk to you. But over time, it's going to be fundamentally driven by the use case metrics, right? How are you acquiring users, retaining users? How are you monetizing these users? And once again, like I mentioned, right, once the froth settles, once the hype dies down, it will go back to fundamentals and basics.
Hmm. Uh, I think so. In terms of the rappers, I think we need to distinguish here two at least two types of rappers, because the first rappers, they were literally rappers. It was just
Yeah.
another interface for ChatGPT and like literally nothing else. They may be still popular in some countries where, say, There is no direct access of ChatGPT and other models. So like
mm,
the wrappers, like the very basic wrappers still work there. The
mm,
second type of wrappers is where basically you don't just give access to the model, but you add some prompts on top of it, say uh, copywriting tools that are also wrappers, but they add a few prompts and uh, basically which um, make it easier to do specific tasks. And
mm,
these tools I see like literally dying on every update from OpenAI because the models become much more, their reasoning becomes much more good. So even that prompt engineering that is added to these wrappers uh, becomes not relevant anymore.
mm,
The third
mm, mm,
type of wrappers I see, and I see some actually good good potential in them and good perspective is where you take various base models like visual, text, audio, and stuff like that. You pick up a use case. Say, let's say it's creation of short movies. So
mm,
obviously, you can just take the base model like which are actually not public yet, but say Sora. But
mm,
people still want to be in control. So for them to be able to say produce 10, 15, 20 minute movie, they need a pretty complex interface where they basically can do it step by steps and also a pipeline of these models. Say initially they are asked what kind of movie they want to do, a horror or a love story or stuff like that. That here we're using some of the language models. We
mm,
are going back and forth. Then we're okay. We have decided which type of movie we want. Then we're creating some references with visual models. Then we're creating some references with audio models, stuff like that. So it's basically a complex pipeline of various models with various modalities to solve specific task. I see potential here because this is obviously not the business of the big models. And in many cases, that's a too little case for them to
mm.
chase for. And it seems to me that startups doing this, they have some more time to kind of find the product market fit before comparing to, say, rappers that are purely prompt engineering. So
Yeah,
interesting to
yeah.
hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, the last part is also the data, right? Like there are companies that are able to acquire data from various sources that are a bit more unique to their use case. And then they can use that data to enhance the existing models in certain ways, right? And these could be specific use case in maybe product development, no code tools. They could be specific use case in areas such as finance. We looked at AI companies that were doing AI use cases for insurance management, right? For policies, like helping agents sell better, right? There's a no-code platform here called Locofy.ai that uses a lot of AI tools for conversion of um, uh, designs into code, right? In a much faster manner. So I think wrapper tools will be a large part of the investment, yes, but over time they will need to evolve with either unique data IP sets or unique tweaks to the models that will allow them to create some kind of a unique offering to the community, right? That then consumers will want to pay for, or it will stand out to.
Hmm.
There are also some players in the space that already have significantly large businesses, but they're using AI as a new way to enhance the existing offering, or a new way to extend the lifetime value of their user base. So, for example, there are tools like HR platform tools, platforms where you go, look for a job, or post a job for your company, right? The AI tools in this case are primarily used to, allow the users on both sides, whether you're a job acquirer or a job a job poster or a job seeker to engage with the organization over a longer period of time and not make it purely transactional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually yeah, it's another interesting use case, and another one I have actually have a few more. So one is basically um, using AI as an interface to the knowledge you have. Like for example, one of my clients, they are
Mm,
collecting. They are kind of a survey platform where they're collecting a lot of survey data from mainly people in Europe and
mm,
people who are into sustainability and stuff like that.
mm,
So they have pretty big data sets. Right now, they can sell just access to that data to their clients, like either big brands or marketing agencies, uh, and it's going good. But what we're doing now is basically we're creating marketing and customer personas that are based on that data and that with whom you can communicate and ask questions. Basically, it's a in a sense it's a rapper, but it's a rapper in a different sense. It's a rapper around the data because you can ask the data as if it was a person. So, like, I'm going to release this new product of, I don't know, a soap. And for example, there are different personas, say, female, 25 to 35
mm,
from Spain. So you can talk to that persona and ask questions like, what kind of packaging would you like? Like, is sustainability important for you or not? And
mm,
while communicating with that persona, you're actually communicating with the data that was collected
mm.
on these type of people.
Yeah, I mean the AI stuff that I'm most excited about are those that really when combined with the human being, right, really accelerate decision making process or improve fault detection issues, those kind of things, right? That to me is the one that's the most exciting. So there are companies in, like, let's say manufacturing, for example. They help improve manufacturing, they help reduce manufacturing defects, or help improve manufacturing quality outputs. Those are the kind of companies that I think are very, very interesting and going to be extremely relevant. So there's a company called Six Sense that does tools that better pinpoint like root causes of equipment failures, those kind of things. So those are the kind of companies I'm most excited about, right? Less on the purely Gen AI kind of companies. And then of course healthcare, right? So I've always been passionate about healthcare. I've been investing in healthcare for a while, and AI for healthcare is phenomenally, to me, is like a really powerful use case for AI, right? So I believe there are AI companies that are helping do cancer detection, do better drug discovery, that are really going to change humanity in a lot of ways.
Hmm. Um, okay, I want to challenge you here a bit. So you mentioned that you are more interested in like deep tech, like AI technologies, like say in
Healthcare, yeah.
medicine, rather than Gen AI. So uh, let's try to think of it this way. There are now many companies that do generative AI for healthcare. So basically, filling out the forms, the reports, and stuff like that. And
Mm,
we as humans, we have a pretty narrow attention window, and we can basically make a limited number of decisions during the day. And now, a pretty significant number of these decisions and attention window of the say health professionals like doctors, surgeons are basically taken by like small mundane tasks. So generative AI basically can slash all of that, leaving
mm,
much more uh, focus, energy, attention of these high level medical professionals to
mm,
actually what they're good in
mm,
like trying to understand better the case of their patient, looking more attentively at their results and stuff like that. And obviously, after that, we have AI that analyzes the results. But even just integrating generative AI
Yeah,
by giving more time to the doctors to do the actual job and not like writing, I think is very, very useful and will also, I think, save a lot of lives.
I completely agree. You can't expect, you can't realistically expect your doctor or healthcare professional to be able to, have a have at as his or her fingertips all the medical related information, and be able to give you the best medical care, right? So to be able to pair an AI tool with him or her, to give you the best healthcare is something phenomenally powerful. I've seen memes or jokes about people seeing that their doctor is using ChatGPT or some kind of tool, AI tool. But to me, I think that's a great thing, right? Like, especially with the concept of more customized and individualized medicine. The same medicine that is given to me to treat a particular problem might not be relevant for you, right? Or might be not even be the most effective for you. So the ability to have very targeted delivery of medical attention to individuals with the power of AI is I think is a tremendous game changer. And then over time, I believe, just by looking at DNA data, AI should be able to customize to an individual level, right? A prescription or medication that is purely designed to have the best possible outcome for my health or my particular situation, right? So the concept of maybe generalized drugs might completely disappear over time, and everything will be specialized, right, to an individual person based on DNA data.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's also interesting. So I have a small community of AI nerds here in Bali, and one of the guys in our community, he is a chief data scientist for a medtech venture fund in the US.
Mm,
So, an interesting thing he told me is that the tools he's using uh, for actually like drug discovery and stuff like that, the technologies, they're actually very similar to language models because it's
mm,
also kind of a language. You have like DNA is a language basically.
mm, mm.
Uh, and yeah, it's an interesting thing I heard from him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. Yeah.
Okay, and so one more type of startups I'm interesting interested to learn if investors in Asia are interested in is like frameworks like LangChain, where you basically create, in many cases, even open source frameworks that other AI apps can use. Like there's
Mm.
LangChain, there is Autogen from Microsoft, and some others. Do you see anything like happening on this front in Asia?
Um, I think a lot of these and are going to end up getting dominated by the big guys, right? Because of the amount of resources needed to really build these tools and services at a significant scalable level. But Locofy, which I mentioned earlier, uh, they're a no-code AI platform. I think they're probably one of the better infrastructure-centric, AI tools or AI companies that I've come across, that would support the use case that you mentioned.
Hmm. uh, Interesting. Like, yeah, I agree on the point that a lot of these use cases will be dominated by big guys. But let's say LangChain was started, as I understand, as a just open source project, and as far as I remember, it's now supported by Anderson Horowitz,
Mm.
if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean,
Is it the Chainlink ecosystem one? That one?
no, 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 no.
Mm.
LangChain is a
How do
basically
you
a
spell that?
framework. It's a Python
Lang
and
change.
yeah, LangChain. So it's a library that uh, gives developers an easier way to access all of the base models, create AI agents, stuff like that. So it's
Right.
basically just a library, a wrapper around other APIs and other tools, which basically makes development of this LLM apps much faster and easier.
Yeah. Interesting.
But obviously, as you rightly mentioned, they are competing with companies like Microsoft. Like for example, Microsoft has a tool called Autogen.
Yeah.
Uh, it's also a framework to build AI agents. So yeah, it's probably a tough market, but there is still uh, interesting things happening there.
Yeah. I haven't come across some of those platforms. Um, but there
Yeah,
was
because they are
one.
mostly kind of uh, they're mostly they're developer focused, so they're not like B2C or B2B. They're basically it's B2 B2D.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is an organization called AI Singapore, which is a government centric organization, right? That has developed some tools also, right, around AI. I'm trying to pull out the right name. Once it gets to me, I will come on. I'll share with you. But um, I think some of this is going to be government led on some level. So not all of it will be purely private, right, at the starting point. Again, because of the amount of investment and funding needed, right? Plus the owner from an ownership standpoint, I think there's also going to be an incentive towards uh, public ownership of AI tools for the greater use of the country, right? So I think those are some of the things to be thinking about.
Hmm. Okay, and that's an interesting link to one of the next questions I had is the policy.
Mm.
So give us a bird's eye view on the policy towards AI in Asia. What's happening?
Okay. So, I mean, so some countries have already come up with their white papers and all, right? Singapore has already started one. I think on a high level, the countries recognize a few parts, right? On the infrastructure level, there needs to be a significant amount of investment on a data center standpoint, as well as like a GPU infrastructure standpoint, right? So that's where attracting investment from companies like AWS, Microsoft really matters. So for markets like Malaysia, for example, a lot of the investment is going on a chip foundry level standpoint, right? So from everything from the manufacturing, the designs, the building of these kind of hardware infrastructure for AI. We are definitely going to see government support and infrastructure investment for AI, and also policies around data protection centered around AI models, right? With respect to where these data are being hosted, how does this data get transported from one country to another, and how does sharing of data across countries actually work? So that's the first part of the puzzle. The second part of the puzzle is around associations and organizations that have agendas towards developing the AI ecosystem. So some of them would be with respect to providing training, upskilling, reskilling, talent-centric issues on AI. Some of them will be with respect to providing grants and support to organizations that are trying to evolve or experiment or use AI-centric solutions to either change their business model or improve their products. Some are driven around policy, regulation, or setting up some kind of a standard or guide, right, with respect to AI usage. And then the last one, of course, would be investments, right? Investments slash overall startup, support ecosystem, right? It's in building out um, uh, ecosystem-centric activities, from funds to events to spaces to resources and support, to the building of organizations that are tapping on AI technologies to scale and grow. So these can be mostly in the support of new companies, or these can be with respect to working with global companies or global startups to relocate themselves here, such that Singapore becomes the hub for them to build these AI technologies. There's one final piece that I forgot to mention earlier, which is the education side. Working with the universities, institutes of higher learnings to ensure that um, the what they are training future students, as well as the pipeline of a talent that is being churned out from these institutions, are also relevant in supporting AI organizations. So fairly widespread, everything from policy to associations to funding to educational institutions.
Hmm. And policy-wise, so you mentioned a few points. Any AI specific policy already implemented, or it's still all on paper?
No, so it's all a work in progress, right? So I think Singapore launched their national AI strategy sometime around 2023, yeah, sometime last year, right? And it was a general policy around how to use AI for good, right? How AI will impact individuals, and they came up with an entire policy on their vision, what are the active drivers, so typically like industry, government, research, how is the infrastructure going to evolve. So it's a very lengthy, I think almost 70 pages of a strategy paper that the country has written out, right? So one of the things, for example, is they have done is they've committed about, I believe, half a billion through various organizations, AI Singapore being one of them, towards AI research and R&D, right, development. The second one is to have like AI governance, right, which is like they're going to be launching their own like AI governance framework. They launched one already in 2019, I believe, but in like 2022, 2023, they're looking at open sourcing, building out this framework for developers to use. So there really a very deep amount of initiatives and activities that have been worked out
Hmm.
just by the Singapore government alone.
Hmm. And so, while all of this on paper, what do you think is the like what we should expect as the like first policies to be implemented? I think, I mean, startups and like enterprises will be interested because it basically helps to build the strategy. So, what should we expect as the very first policies to be implemented?
I mean, the first policies that have already been implemented are the investment centric ones, right? The ones that support R&D, the ones that are providing capital resources to companies that want to build using AI tech and want to evolve using AI tech, right? So to me, that's the first layer that has already been implemented and is working fairly effectively, right? On the funding level. So that's the one that is most relevant as a starting point. I mean, later on, right, of course, is of course it has to do a lot with talent and training. That one will take time, right, because you need to ensure that the right kind of courses and the right kind of um, mechanisms are put in place to incentivize individuals to take up a lot of these initiatives. So working with corporate companies or working with larger organizations to send people for courses. The government has this concept called Skills Future, which is they provide individuals with budgets to take up courses online, and a lot of these courses are AI centric, right? So funding is the big starting one, starting point. Focus on, of course, accelerator programs, the startup ecosystem in general, and then talent and knowledge is the second one. And then, of course, there are government centric activities that are being done as well. So municipal services, like services that you would typically get from your government agencies, looking at using chatbots and AI services to solve some of those problems. Those are some of the things that they've also started to implement.
Hmm. And in terms of the restrictive regulation, is anything already implemented, and what do you envision like the first ones will be?
When you say restrictive, do you mean from a policy standpoint or from a
Yeah,
defense
yeah,
standpoint?
yeah. Like restrictive regulation, I mean, like in terms of like what you can use to train the models, like maybe even the limits on the sizes of the models.
Yeah. To be very honest, I'm not so familiar on that side, but I do know that cybersecurity is a big a challenge that they're looking at, right? So they actually have a new military arm. Let me just um, remember correctly, they have a new military arm that they have launched that is driven around not just AI but cybersecurity and digital defense related activities. So that's one big area that they're looking at. Second thing is in working with companies to bolster up cybersecurity defenses. And a lot of it is going to be driven by potentially AI centric issues, right? So, yeah, cybersecurity is the area that they're focused on quite a bit.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, and cybersecurity is a good link to the next thing I wanted to discuss with you, and it's slightly more philosophical in some sense.
Mm,
So, AI anxiety, AI fears. So, I see three big fears people have about AI. First, obviously, it's losing the jobs to
mm,
AI. Second one is malevolent actors getting access to very powerful AIs
mm,
and either using it as a tool of war or for propaganda and stuff like that. And the third one is AGI. So,
mm.
what do you think of each of these fears? Do you feel they are kind of they have some substance, or we actually won't have these problems people fear?
Mm, I think the fear is a reasonable one, especially for people that don't fully understand AI, right? And it doesn't help that Hollywood has also glamorized AI in that sense. Um, so on some level, I think there is also a good amount of fear and worry to have with AI. I think the thing with AI is a lot of them are being developed as agents now, right? So you have, for a company, you can develop an agent for your organization. Um, I think different organizations will have AI agents of their own. The tricky part is when all of these agents start working together in a manner that humans can't fully understand. And I believe Eric Schmidt, which is the ex Google co-founder, mentioned a situation like that, right? Um, and the thing is, we don't know when that will come, but it will probably come a lot faster than we think it will, right? Especially since AI is developing at such a ridiculously rapid pace, right? Um, should there be some level of control and policy around that? I think yes, absolutely yes. We can't just take it for granted that it'll all be fine. But when it comes to areas like job displacement, when it comes to areas like fake news, um, I think there has to be two aspects to this, right? One is there has to be a level of reskilling, upskilling, and training that needs to happen. And with every large technological revolution, jobs haven't magically disappeared; they've always evolved. And I think with AI, that will definitely happen and needs to happen. The goal is for governments and organizations to figure out how best to educate the workers and how best to make sure that the transition is done as smoothly as possible. So that's the first piece, right? And the second piece with regards to deep fake and technology centric issues, right, is of course is going to be regulation around tech. I think the larger big players do want regulation and do recognize that it is needed. The challenge is, of course, um, figuring out what that regulation actually looks like. Now, that of course is going to take some time, but I think once that happens, then the propensity of that causing havoc will at least be reduced on some level, right? The biggest problem for that is inaction. And I think if governments or organizations don't figure that out quickly enough or don't dedicate enough time and effort to solving that problem, then that's when the issue will happen. It's less about the tech, more about the inaction for governments and large organizations to figure out the regulation of AI.
Hmm. So basically, the I guess your advice to both people who are afraid to lose the job and also organizations who are afraid to basically uh, um, be taken from the market by this huge force is basically education, educating yourself as a professional how to use these tools, and educating your organization basically also how to integrate these tools.
Yeah. If as an organization you haven't had a deep conversation with your entire organization on how to use AI or how to use AI to disrupt yourselves and all that, right? If you haven't done that, then you most definitely should, because your entire organization could go obsolete in a very short time if you don't figure out how AI can help. There's also this aspect of scalability, right? So if you think about it, right, in order for your workforce to remain viable over the long term, there has to be some level of scalability that you need to attach to it. And scalability can be through more people, better processes, or technology. And I think this is where organizations can scale themselves more effectively. They can grow to more markets, they can handle more customers, do more business overall through the use of AI programs, right? So it's going to be it's not going to be a nice to have anymore, right? It's going to be an absolute must have for organizations to adopt AI. And if they don't do it fast enough, they will get obsolete. The challenge is for them to do that in a sustainable manner, right? I don't agree that AI is just going to be a tool that is going to bring into companies and there's going to be massive layoffs. I think there will be a natural evolution with how workers use the tools to scale, right? So for example, for me, right, I have a content team that generates content. We don't suddenly fire our entire content team and just use ChatGPT or content-based AI tools to create content on the site, right? We all know that Google will penalize you for doing that. But instead, we are able to scale the output production of the existing team using AI tools. We're able to improve the output quality of the content teams using AI tools. And that's what's going to happen.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree, but it seems like not all businesses, especially small and medium ones, have kind of space to scale. So basically, if they had, I don't know, 10 salespeople or 10 content managers, and now one can do the same as these 10 were doing, like basically the other nine are, I mean, there's no place for them there.
Um, I mean, some companies will not cross that chasm, right? And then they'll probably end up going out of business. And that happens regardless of whether there is technology or not, right?
Yeah, for sure.
In some cases they don't evolve with the market condition. In some cases they don't evolve from a customer centric need standpoint, right? I think every business goes through some level of evolution over time. AI is just one tiny bit, right, over many others. So businesses that don't evolve just die anyway. So to me that seems to be business as usual.
Hmm. Hmm.
The key here is this, right? So the role of government is to support that transition and to make it as smooth and as less painful as possible. And that support can come in multiple forms, right? It can come in funding, it can come in support through infrastructure, it can come through education, and it can come through ecosystem building activities, right? And I think, okay, the Singapore government is obviously doing the right thing there, but that's where the role I think government has to support that transition, and to facilitate, right? um, and to make sure that businesses are equipped to operate in the new normal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, what do you think about AGI? Have you thought of that? Do you think we'll have it in the next few years? AGI, artificial general intelligence, where basically uh, the AI is as intelligent as any person on Earth.
Yeah. I mean, it'll definitely happen, right? At some point, it'll probably happen faster than we think. But yeah, it's a function of time now, right? It's not a function of if, but just a matter of when. Um, I think when that ends up really happening, right? Humanity as a whole will probably need to figure out what it truly means to be human, and the role of community is going to be even more important, right? The function of work will also evolve as well. um, I'm pretty excited that at least in my lifetime I will be able to experience that, um, but I think it's important for all of us to prepare ourselves, right, to figure out how to be ready for an environment like that. But I think on some level, if the governments also get their act together, right, they will probably put again the right guardrails in place to ensure that the transition isn't as drastic and ridiculous or scary, as the media makes it out to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned about rethinking what it means to be human, because uh, Nick Bostrom recently released a new book called Deep Utopia. And basically, there he is telling that it's more like a contemplative book. So basically, um, when all the functional activities are basically slashed, we don't need to do them anymore, like any
Mm,
utilitarian activities. We don't need to do them anymore.
mm,
What we will be doing. So, and that basically puts us back in the position of thinking like what's important for us, what are our values. Because if we right now, most of our like life is driven by making money, doing business, and all that stuff.
yeah,
But what if we don't need to do anything uh, utilitarian anymore?
yeah. I think the humanity will probably redefine utility and value, right? It could come in other forms that maybe are not critically important today, but if you look at art, right? Like, I mean, in the last 20 years, STEM has taken a much bigger lion's share of the attention of the world in terms of education and appreciation for its value. But in the last few years, the deeper appreciation for things like art and music, has also taken a deeper appreciation, right? So we could end up, rethinking and revaluing, what are the skill sets that humans value, and yeah, there could be a new normal, right, or a new reset, right, to the world order that isn't purely driven by capitalism. Sorry, the
Hmm.
co-working space I'm at, yeah, just switched off the light, so I've suddenly gone dark.
It's okay. Actually, I have one last question for you.
Mm.
Uh, Three AI tools you and your team are using on a daily basis, and you can recommend to our listeners.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, we are very, I think we are very vanilla in the use of tools, right? Internally, we definitely use ChatGPT. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a fairly basic one. We
Mm-hmm.
are very active users of Grammarly as well.
Mm-hmm.
That really helps with making sure content copy is good. We
Mm-hmm.
use Hypotenuse AI. We use
Which
Otter.ai
one?
for Hypotenuse.
What's that?
It's also a content centric tool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then we use Otter.ai, which is very very big for transcriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're exploring a few other tools. There's one tool. Let me just check. I started to check out recently. Let me see. I think it's something to do with video creation that my team was talking about. CapCut, yeah, I think we're using CapCut as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's a pure AI centric tool, but yeah, I think it kind of does fall under it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
I mean,
for,
not
for for
every other tool now
video
seems to have AI now, right? So Canva has AI as well, so we use Canva quite a bit.
for video, you may also, if you haven't, I mean, obviously, you probably have tried Runway
Oh yes,
ML.
yes, yes, of course. Yeah, we've
Yeah,
tried
and
Runway, we've tried um, quite a
the recent
few.
one, the most recent one, I think it's called Luma. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, Luma AI. So
Yeah.
yeah, and did you guys also try the music generation ones like
No,
Udio?
we haven't used any of those. Music ones, no, not really.
I mean, it's
Uh,
not only music, it actually can create voiceovers, can create like stand-ups, like literally anything, like all kinds of sound effects. Pretty good. It's udio.com, and the second one was suno.com.
okay. Well, I'll go check it out. Mm,
Amazing. Thank you very much, Mohan. Was very interesting to hear your thoughts on, especially on the regulation side. I see you're very kind of deep into that, and as I remember, you are guys organizing that big event in Sri Lanka, right? Is it open to public or is it?
So the big event we organized was in Singapore, and then we're doing one in Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
in end September, and then I'm attending a conference in Sri Lanka next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a government centric event, but yeah, it's a large part of it is really on AI.
Nice, amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad I got a chance to be able to share a bit more on my views for AI.
Great. Guys, please share Mohan on social media. Please check out E27, especially if you are a startup if you are an investor. Very valuable platform. And obviously come to the Echelon events, the nearest in September in Philippines. Thank you, Mohan.
Thanks.
Oh.